Hey, welcome to another episode of Strive 365, the podcast dedicated to helping you push through challenges and thrive every day, no matter the odds. We're here to help and guide you to live a better life, whether it be mentally, physically, emotionally, or spiritually. And I am your host, Justin Arnold, in the amazing RockVox studio. And today, man, we just have this cool dude. His name's Beaver Fleming. I want to feel like I met him pre-COVID, so we've known each other for a few years. He's a professional skateboarder, motivational speaker, advocate for personal growth. When I met him, it was he was here on oh my God, what's that called? What's the tour you go on? I just had a brain.
Nitro Circuit.
The Nitro Circuit, which if you've never been, you have to go, and you have to go when he's there. I mean, there's other cool dudes too, but Beaver's pretty amazing. But anyways, Beaver embodies the spirit of resilience and determination. Through his journey, he has overcome obstacles, honed a positive mindset, and that's one of the things that attracted me to him, and discover the power of setting intentions. So let's join us today here as we sit back, relax, and have a great conversation with Beaver. So Beaver, why don't you introduce yourself to the wonderful listeners, viewers? We're on all channels, so go ahead.
What is up, Justin? Appreciate you big time, man, for having us on. Super grateful. Just always fun watching you as well, and just all the encouragement that you do just by how you live, man. It's amazing and inspiring. Literally, you embody striving 365. Every single day, I see your post. You're doing something, whether you're at the gym, whether you're hustling, or you're doing stuff with your family. And so it's really cool. And I'm just grateful, man, to know you and like-minded people that just want to live an epic life, but also build others as well. Not just do it for themselves, but share what they do. So,
wow, man,
it's gonna be fun.
I introduced you, and you just like gave me some props, and I'm like blushing over here, and I'm appreciative. And this is why I love this guy, man. He's just a cool dude, and he's very humble, and he's married, and where are you living at? You're out west, right?
I'm in San Diego, Carlsbad.
Okay.
Yep.
And yeah, he's a father. Let's talk about that. Let's just start with that. He's a dad.
Let's go.
He's a new dad. Tell me how that's going and what's up with that.
It has been the most incredible thing. I think everyone says becoming a parent like changes you. You step into this whole nother dimension, and I think it really does. I don't know if it necessarily changes you as much as it uncovers like real passion and purpose and what life's all about. You know, I've just experienced a new level of joy that I didn't know was possible in these last couple of months, and just gratitude as well. Just being grateful for a happy, healthy baby, happy, healthy wife. Like, she was amazing during the whole process. And I just realized how much stronger I feel she is than me at times, because going through and watching and just supporting her in that, it's insane, man, what they go through. And can only encourage as much as I can. But at the end of the day, it was on her to make it happen. And we've been enjoying it. Thankfully, we got a little man that sleeps really good. So 2.5 months in, and we're just so pumped.
2.5 months. I was going to ask, I couldn't remember, but yeah, like birthing. Like, I've been through 3, and it's just, the first, they're all great, but I just remember, I didn't know what, you watch video. I don't know if you did this, but like we went did the video thing. We wanted to be prepared as possible. Read a book or two, but it was like, I was like, the videos it was just weird. And then when it actually happens, it just felt spiritual. I wept, and I was just like, this is the most beautiful thing. And you just feel the energy in the room and the connection. And like when you hold your baby, there's, I don't know, it's a hard feeling to describe, but I can't compare anything to it. I mean,
no.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Yeah. It was wild. The crazy one for me too was, I haven't really watched videos, but I guess in movies or whatever, you see like as soon as it comes out, they're already screaming. But like our baby boy was like literally lifeless. Like, you know what I mean? I saw him take his first breath and go like, and then start the screaming. And I was like, I thought they were screaming as they were coming out. You know what I mean? But he came all the way out and then like took the breath, and I literally saw life enter him. And like you're saying, there was just the spiritual moment, unlike anything I've ever experienced, felt. And it was powerful, man. And in an instant, it's like, wow, like everything is just new, and you're so in love with something, and it's, you can't describe it. You really can't.
It's gotta, but so are you still pretty much still traveling too with your career and everything?
Yeah, thankfully I've only had one trip so far. I leave next week for another trip, and things start to ramp up for the summer. But thankfully we had kind of a slower spring season this year, and got to be pretty much been present for the whole first little bit.
Are they going to travel with you at all in any of these, or is it pretty much you?
That's the goal.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the goal. This one coming up next week is just a quick weekend one, so I'm going to go out. But we're doing our big tour this fall, and I think we're going to look into just getting the old motorhome and full sending it, bring the family along for the ride.
Do it. We've got a camper. I mean, we're not living out of the camper per se, but if it was my choice and my career worked out that way that I could just have a traveling thing, that would be awesome. I totally am support of that. I'm glad you could do that because, yeah, I mean, you probably already know it. Even 2.5 months has flown by. I've got a 13-year-old, and I was like, what? I still feel like a 13-year-old, and I've got one in the house, and it's like the craziest. So what's the plan? Like, 2.5 months, you're gonna just, as soon as it starts really fast crawling, you're just gonna put on a skateboard, right?
I mean, I feel like I have to. You know what I'm saying? Like he'll be skating before he's walking. Like, figure as long as he's standing, we'll get him going. I'm honestly excited for it because I grew up. I didn't even know what a skateboard was till kind of older in my life. So I'm excited to kind of build and train up this dude with just a different growing up than I had. I grew up in Tennessee, which we don't have an ocean right now. We're living half a mile from the beach. So I'm excited for that. Like, going to the beach was a thing when I was a kid. It was like this whole ordeal. You got to make a trip, you got to plan it. And now it's like, hey, do you want to go to the beach? And we have the privilege and blessing of doing that every single day if we want to. Like, I surfed this morning, and my wife is a big surfer. She taught lessons in Maui for like 5 years. And so I'm just excited to kind of, develop new family dynamics. That's totally different from, I guess, my lineage in a way, because we grew up just living differently. I was the first one to kind of break out into the action sports world. And so it's going to be fun to kind of start a new chapter. And this is going to be his normal, going to the skate park, going to Nitro Circus. And it's going to be fun. Yeah.
And obviously people who listen to this or know me, I'm a big person on movement. I don't care what it is, just some kind of movement practice. Yeah. And I think that's so cool that that's your lifestyle. That's how you make your living, and that you can put that into the child's life. Like here, I didn't grow up ice skating, but I do play hockey now. And I got a daughter and a son who are hockey players that are getting pretty good at it. And it's kind of the same thing here. It's like, the running joke is as soon as the kid's born, you're strapping some skates on it as soon as they can like get past crawling. Yeah. So that's why I had to ask that, because it's like, man, as soon as you can get them into stuff that's just challenging their mind and their body, and then just stuff you can do with them together. But that's amazing. I think that's going to be cool. I'm going to definitely enjoy the ride and watching that. So yeah. Okay. Anything else about fatherhood before we shift the gears here that you'd love to share in the new stage of your life, new season?
I mean, just everything about it has just made me feel more passion and purpose for everything I'm doing, which I think is powerful, right? When something, it's like, now I've got an even bigger, like, why behind it. Like, now I got to provide for an entire another life, right? It's like, you're single, you're doing your thing, you're on your own. Your goals are a little bit different. And then once you're married, it's like, okay, I got to have, like, now it's not just me, it's my partner as well. We're becoming one. Now we got a family, like little man, we got him till, he's at least 18. And I always joke, and was telling my wife, Gabrielle, this before we had a kid. I was like, once we have a kid, we're never not parents. You know what I mean? It's like, you're never not a parent. So just trying to enjoy the most out of these seasons. And I think that's where I'm at right now with this season of fatherhood. Like, he's already growing so much in the first 2 months. And I'm like, man, like, you just gotta really, everyone always says, right, it goes so fast. But I think a lot in our culture, we don't enjoy and treat it with the respect that it necessarily deserves. So again, I was so thankful I've had these couple months to be present, be home, not be on the road, and be able to be here for all those little, now he's got his eyes open more. Now he's making noises, all the different things. And so just trying to enjoy the present, being present, and take it for all it's worth. Yeah.
And I can't say like it wasn't I had that attitude. You have such a great attitude starting out. It's such a young father. I didn't know I was going to be a dad. And then when I became one, it's like, oh my goodness, everything you just said like popped into my head. Like, it's not about me anymore. Mm-hmm. My why just became bigger. And it continues to be that way as they get older and they get more expensive. But they're motivated. Like, not to say that I would have just sat at home and done nothing. I've always been a driver, but
Right.
it gives me more motivation to get up in personal development, professional development. Like I'm working towards something big. And something I started saying, I can't remember when, I'm 42 now. It had to be in like my mid or early 30s. I started saying, outside being a great husband, obviously, like my number one job is being dad. It really is. And all vehicles, yes, you can have a career in skateboarding. I own a gym. I'm a trainer. And that doesn't mean I don't care about my clients or the gym is important. But it gets me to work harder at those things, knowing that my number one job is dad. And then everything is a vehicle to be better at that, whether it be the money coming in, the things that are going on and around it. And so that's always been my motivating factor. Even when I've had challenging days or hard days, or like even during COVID where my business was shut down, it's like, well, my number one job is dad. So what can I do to do that? So, and then everything just started working out. So it's like, so I love that attitude. I love that you're saying big why. And we just have to remember that. And like something else you said, I really want to touch on was you never stop being a parent. Once you're a parent, you're a parent. Like I was reading a book recently and it's talking about the different stages. And it's like, even when they graduate and they move out of the house, you're still a parent. They're still calling you up. And I'm like, that's so true, because like my wife and I still check in, and there's still advice, and it's almost like a life coach for life. You're going to be your son's best life coach, right? Because like he's going to be at stages that you've already surpassed, that you could help him out from your screw ups or your good moments. And then you'd be like, actually, I went through something similar, son. Right? Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So your attitude is
and that's what I'm excited for too, is just more so leading by example as well. Like I had an incredible example. I believe my parents did the best they could with what they had, and praise God, they've had well over 30 years of marriage and grew up in a Christian home. So we'll dive into the faith a little bit, but
yeah, for sure.
I'm excited to really just lead by example. Like I know just in life and from what I've seen and experienced and like the fathers that I look up to, as well as my own father, the things that I really admire are the things that I'm like, monkey see, monkey do, right? We're creatures of habit, we're creatures of structure, but really we're creatures of knowing like, okay, I'm not going to do what you say, I'm going to do what you do. Right. And that's where the habits really transform. So even for me, it's like a higher level of accountability for me. It's like, if I tell my son, hey, clean your room, I better make sure my room's clean. I better make sure my car's clean. Like if I want respecting our home and house, like I better lead that by example. If I want to develop the culture and habit of like, I don't know when he's going to know, but almost every morning I'll take him with me in the morning so my wife can get a little more sleep, and I'll start reading with him on my lap. Like I just want him to know from his very first memory, like that's what daddy does. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take time to, get into the word, get into the Bible, get yourself filled up spiritually so that then you can go out and do the other things. And again, same thing with like doing things with like good intentions, but doing them well as well, having a spirit of excellence. So not just having like core values written on a board in our house that look nice. It's like, no, these are actually the core values that we take everywhere we go. And I think that's one of the things later in my life now, as I feel called to so many different spheres, from skateboarding to speaking to entrepreneurship with businesses, all kinds of fatherhood, husbandry. I'm like, okay, I can have all these like tangible written out like metric goals, or I can say, no, I want to be faithful. I want to be passionate. I want to be disciplined. I want to be diligent, because if I'm passionate and disciplined and faithful, that's going to show up in my skating. It's going to show up in my business. It's going to show up in my family. And that's what can kind of transcend. So it's kind of like shifting the mentality of metric goals, where it's like, realistically, it's never going to be enough, no matter if you hit X amount in your bank account or do every trick in the book or win every X Games. It's like, no, this is what's actually going to outlast that, these values and structures I want to create, not only for myself, but also for my family.
Man, I love that. You basically pointed at what I talk about, and like they're always watching. They're not always listening. They're always watching, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. They're mimicking you. And hey, so I'll give you this. There was I actually just included it in my second book a little bit, because the importance of like kids and watching and joy and all these things. But there was like researchers show why it's so important to play like peekaboo and play different games with your kids. It seems silly. There's actually
my wife showed me a video about that, or actually my dad sent me the peekaboo video.
Okay, yeah. I think somebody did a TED Talk on it or something like that.
It was a little girl doing the TED Talk, right?
Okay, yeah. So
she's like 7 or 8 years old and she's talking about it. It was pretty impressive, her whole speech on that.
So I remember reading the study, and the study had caught me to that video that you're probably talking about. Because I remember watching that, and I was just curious about these things, why we do these things. That's just, so me, like, just in a nutshell, like, not that I have dead time, but I have probably ADD, but I'll be doing work and then I'm like, something popped in my head. Why do we start playing peekaboo? Like, that's that's what goes on in Justin's mind. I'm like, oh, where did peekaboo come from? So that's just things I do. And then anyways, then I was like, well, there's a massive scientific basis of why this is so important. And so cool thing you watch it. So like, I don't even need to bring that up for you, but yeah, these things are important. These things that seem silly, especially as dads. I imagine, because it's what I see and what I hear and the clients that I work with and the fathers, and, you know, we're put on this thing it feels like, in culture to, provide and protect, which we should definitely do. But it's also like, you know, I feel like, and correct me if you feel differently, because I feel like there's a lot of pressure on us to be a certain type of man. And women are, maybe there's still some of those stereotypical roles, but I feel like to be the best dad, we need to be present. And if you talked about, you know, we need to be active. We need to play with them. We need to do these silly little weird games with them. Like, the dad role is massively important, and not just the dad role and the providing and the protection, but also in, like, the being there and watching them and like I said, being silly with them, or skateboarding, or whatever it might be, right?
Enjoying life, right? I'll just go back to the Bible, right? It talks about the fruits of the Spirit, our love, our joy. Like, those are the first two, is love and joy. And I just think, man, as a believer, there's so many people in the church that just really don't look that happy or joyful. They're not experiencing a lot of joy, but like, that's a good fruit of the Spirit. That's the Holy Spirit. Like, the Holy Spirit inside of you is meant to produce joy. But we also, having the Spirit within us, need to be tending that garden and making opportunities for joy to be available, right? If we're so rigid, we're so strict, we're so focused on all these little things and doing them a certain way, we're going to miss out on the joy and the beauty and kind of the dance of life. And so it's the same thing like you're talking about with a kid. It's like, yeah, we need to be that protector. We need to be that provider, but we also need to provide joy. We also need to provide fun and show them not to take things too seriously at times, but actually you need to enjoy what you're doing. Like, we can go to work just to get a task done, or we can actually enjoy what we're doing. And it's hard to find that balance, especially when you turn your passion into your profession, like I've done in my life, like skateboarding. I'm in a 10-year career right now. I've hit, this is my 11th year as a professional skateboarder, and would used to always joke, like, it's better than a real job. And I'm thankful for that lifestyle it's presented. But also, I think when you do turn your passion into your profession and it becomes your job, it's easy to kind of like lose that joy in what you're doing. And then again, I had to check myself not too long ago, because I'm like, wait a second, the Bible even says the joy of the Lord is your strength, but I'm not having fun right now. I'm not having joy right now. And to be honest, I don't feel that strong. I feel like I'm trying to force things and I can get them done, but they don't look done well. They don't look as joyful. There's not this grace on it that's allowing me to actually enjoy what I do and give me that freedom. So it's finding that kind of real delicate balance of, tending your garden, your spiritual life, your mental life, your relational life, that's going to bring back into your passion, and knowing that when you have your job, don't just see it as a means to get by, like your life, right? It's like, yes, it does that. It does provide that for you. But when that's all it is, then you're just trying to suck stuff out of it. You're not trying to give anything back to it. And it's a constant, like, in my head, it's tending the garden, right? It's like, to have, if the fruit of the Spirit is joy, joy is the fruit, I've got to make sure that my tree, right, the tree of life, is in an environment that can produce that joy. I got to make sure that it's getting the right nourishment. It's getting the right things. It's not getting toxic water, right? It's making sure it's in the right spot, getting what it needs. If it's not producing good fruit, all right, let's prune that out. Let's prune that thought out, take every thought captive, and then let's get back into alignment to where we're able to really produce fun joy. And I think for us as believers, that's what's going to be more attractive in this next generation. It's people that are having fun, they're passionate, but they have this level of joy that the world doesn't have. And that's what's going to be attracting people and getting them grafted in to a relationship with God.
You just covered several points in my book because it's literally
wow.
that's crazy because, well, you talk about the garden and I actually have a subsection in there about your mind is a garden and things like that. And I talked on similar things you just talked about. So I just found that fascinating, man, that you really covered some really cool stuff. Plus, I just love your passion, man. This is one of these guys. And I get this sometimes, but this is one of these guys, like he just walks in a room and like he's going to bring the energy, bring the joy. And that's why I'm so glad you're here. And you're bringing that on here. This is truly who this guy is. Something you also said earlier, I want to touch on. It reminded me, my daughter, so our oldest daughter, she's 13. She does lacrosse and she does FCA. I don't know if you're familiar with FCA.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So one of the things we got into, we weren't real familiar with it. We had never heard of it, but she made the travel team. And we knew it was about like faith, to a point, but we weren't sure. But one of the things I loved, especially a recent meeting, is getting parents talking about what it was. It doesn't mean you need to be a Christian to be an FCA, but they're just letting everyone know that this is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about Jesus because what we're trying to do, and now it's men, women, but they were specifically talking to women's lacrosse parents, and they said we're trying to build women past the sport. Some may play in high school if they're blessed enough, they will play off in college. But after that, they may not be playing except for maybe some fun stuff, but there's not a whole lot. So we're trying to build young women, young ladies, and into something bigger past the sport of lacrosse. And so, mindset and all the different things and like values and just strong women. And I really love that. And they're like, whether they continue to, be a Christian or even practice Christianity, the point is like, we're building some life skills here and that's our mission. And I was like, I've been to other sports, I've been to other things, and I hear sprinklings, but not to the magnitude that I heard that. And that's what made us just fall in love with it. And you're talking about that just from your own family perspective of like, what you're trying to do. So I'll connect the dots here. I sent out a questionnaire to my guests, and one of the things that he mentioned, one of the most meaningful things that he's ever done or ever happened in his life, personally or professionally, is the constant changes and new things happening in God. So we've talked about faith, but could you elaborate on how these changes in the presence of God have impacted your life and contributed its meaning and significance?
For sure. And honestly, it's just... I always have to go to the Bible, right? Because that's God's word, and that's just what inspires and encourages me, and it's fresh on a daily basis. It was fresh thousands of years ago. It's still fresh today, and it's going to be fresh for every day this earth exists. And I just think about his mercies are new every day. So like every day, what that means, like mercy is actually a gift, and it's a given to us to experience something new. It's given to us to experience like the fullness of life. I've had incredible experiences, and some of them have been in front of thousands and thousands, sold out arenas all across the world. Like I remember this one show we did in Paris, and I nailed the trick and won the contest at the Nitro show, and was just the energy was so electric. But then like this morning, I was just having fun in the ocean with my boys, and we were just surfing and having fun, laughing at each other, like goofing off in the water. And it's just finding that contentment, whether it's in the highest of highs or just something so simple, or even like last night, just watching a movie with my wife, but being present with her and enjoying it, and being there, or waking up and hanging out with my kid, like every day. Like I find it hard to put like moments and encapsulate them and put them on such a high pedestal, like, that was the greatest thing that's ever happened, because it's like, all right, well, isn't there more? Like life's constantly a journey. It's going to have more opportunities. And I think giving things the respect that they deserve, right? Like actually, and this is, again, one of the things I've learned the most with becoming a father. Like one of the first things we did when we took him on a walk, I was like, he's never seen any of this stuff. Like, I don't know how far his vision is right now, but I'm like, that's a mailbox, and that's a tree, and that's a tire. Like just explaining all these things, because you'd never like
curiosity.
We just go throughout our life, and the curiosity, but also the reverence and respect that we have for it, right? We're very entitled in our culture. We get in our car, we just drive, we forget where we're going, we forget what we're doing, and we forget what's all around us. But I think if we can slow down a little more and actually appreciate things, like, right, even meals, like how easy is it to go and just eat a meal without even thinking about it. Like, I just need to fuel my tank. It's all about the getting, not being like, man, I'm so grateful that like someone actually farmed out this, this cattle and got me this massive steak that I can enjoy right now, season up, cook up, grill. But just that level of appreciation, I think, can help make those moments mean way more, but also give you more moments to look forward to. It doesn't have to be the biggest, baddest trick you've ever done. You can find that same passion and fire for life, even in just cooking a steak or hanging with your family. Like how can we develop that?
It's interesting you said steak. I just read a page out of
I'm
something.
a big meat eater.
What's up? No,
you're
making me hungry. Honestly, I'm a Midwest guy, so I'm from the Chicago suburbs. When you're talking about beaches, like, we got excited when we went to like Lake Michigan, which was not the cleanest in the world. Right? And you're talking about California. Anywho, but there's a Bourdain. I don't know if it's a quote, but it's just how he lived his life. We all know he lived it in a he succumbed to his vices of sorts and amazing man, very positive, traveled the world. But one of the things he would say, I'm paraphrasing off the thing I read, but is essentially his best moments were in the backyard grilling burgers with his kids and his family. Like he did all these amazing things and we can only see it from like, look at this star on TV doing these incredible things, but it's just a perspective, like, and I was like, man, what if he just came up with an idea of like hometown favorites and just went around his hometown so he could stick around hometown at least for a month. Like he had control of that show, but he didn't. He chose to travel and, and during that he really missed his family and then he had addictions and things like that. But I bring that up because it's just even this guy who had what we would assume had everything going. He was, all the money, all the things and the most best moments in his life wasn't some vacation. It was, you said steak, but burgers. And he could cook anything. Like this guy's he's a professional foodie, chef, things like that. So it's like, I just read that the other day, so I had to bring it up and it's just something to remember. Yeah. You're talking about all these like endorphin highs. Like if those are listening right now or watching that have never been to a nitro circuit, so even if you're just like for example, my wife, like before we went, I got her a ticket and she's like, I don't think I'm going to be into this. I'm not into this stuff. This is your son, maybe the girls. And she's like, she took so many pictures of me. She's like, that was awesome. Like she left feeling the energy, the things you see. You don't have to be into the things at Nitro. So you don't even have to know what they're doing or using. You don't even have to know the word skateboard or even what that is and just go and watch. And like, it's just as positive, supportive, like even the people in the show, people in the stands, you'll see an array of people and it's just a massive thing. So I bring that up because it's like, it's got to be an endorphin rush, especially if you win, like you said, in I think Paris and hit these massive tricks. But we know you can't sustain that high. You can't sustain that. So how do you, when you're on these, you kind of touched on about there's people because we struggle. Like I get these highs and then, you can't stay there. So how do you come down from that? How, when it's not sustainable, how do you maintain joy or what goes on in your mind and what tips can you provide listeners and viewers that might struggle with that? They get on this high and then they're always searching for it, right? Because they love that feeling. Right. But you can't. Let's talk on that. I mean,
and I wish I had the strike answer, like perfect solution, but I think it's different for everybody and kind of a theme. It's funny, man.
What do you do, man?
Spirit works.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm getting into. Like, so the way the spirit works and something that I really need to go even deeper on, I felt challenged with this thought kind of at the beginning of the year. And it was less about routine and more about rhythms and understanding, because a guy like me, I know for my life, some days I'm going to skate, some days I'm going to speak, some days I'm going to be competing in front of thousands, some days I'm just going to be in the backyard with my boy. So it's not necessarily like the routines of that. That's just not my personal life. And I honestly don't know if it's anyone's life really. But how can you find rhythms that are still going to help you achieve that? So basically, like the word I was meditating on was, what are the rhythms that let you flow? What are the remedies that help you grow? And how can you, rather than using these things, actually have them be in harmony with you? Like, what are the rhythms that we need in our daily life? So for me, it's prayer, time with my wife, time with my son, time in some sort of water, like whether it be a shower, cold plunge, ocean. I need that. Like that's a rhythm and a remedy for me. Like that's the honey hole.
Like non-negotiables, like it sounds like, right?
Non-negotiables. Yeah. Like, but more so like rhythms, like, and having that joy in it and figuring out like, all right, what food's going to nourish me? You know what I mean? Like there's all kinds of food around, everything's accessible, but what's actually going to give me what I need right now? And being real with yourself, like there's some days, man, I need a fat steak. Some days I actually need a salad or a green juice. You know what I mean? Like there's different things that we need at different points in our life. Dude, I'm telling you, I'm
that's my next Instagram post, and people are like, what? I'm just wanting to be honest. I need a fat steak.
It's like you need it. I did a video last year, like we were from tour, and it was like, you know, in your head, you're like, oh, I need to get back at it. I need to crush it. I'm like, dude, I just came off like 2 flights. We did 3 shows this past weekend. I need to take a nap. And so I like did this whole video about like, take the nap, but earn the nap. You know what I mean? Like if your body's telling you you need to wind down and take a nap, take it. Like, let that be a rhythm. Don't beat yourself up on it if that's actually what you need. So I think having that grace for yourself, but being in tune with yourself, like, okay, do I really need to push it 100% today? Or do I maybe need to focus, like if we're taking it into, you know, personal development, do I need to work on mobility, stretching? Maybe I need to be a little more limber. Maybe I was too tight in my last workout. I couldn't quite get the range of motion I wanted. Maybe I don't hit weights again today. Maybe I actually work on mobility and make sure that my body is getting into these positions that I want to do so I can perform well. So finding out what that rhythm looks like, and it's constantly going to change. And then, you know what? Some days, man, I might need an extra coffee this day. Like that's like the remedy, right? It's like you can use something to help enhance
it's a tool, right?
What you want to do or achieve. If you're grogging a little bit, you don't have time to nap because you actually have a deadline or something. You know what? Slug that cup of coffee, but know what its purpose is. Don't just use it to use it. Have purpose behind the decisions you're making and figure out like I think self-awareness, right? And if I think about our world today, and again, what we're talking about, it's leaning toward the fatherhood, and kind of my biggest goal as a father is to develop a content, secure human, right? Like I want my son to be content and secure in who they are. I don't want them to wonder, because right now we see chaos and confusion everywhere in the world. And I believe it's because families are broken. They don't know who they are. How can they help develop their kids into who they are going to be? If they don't know, we're monkey see, monkey do. If daddy doesn't know who he is, you know, that's why kids are wondering, what am I? Am I a boy? Am I a girl? Am I both? Am I what? Like, I mean, it's real. It's real. We're going there because this is the fight that we're called to right now. But I believe if we can be more content and secure in who we are, you know, my boy is going to be able to look at that and like, no, that's who we are. We're faithful. We're courageous. We're passionate. We're integrous. We operate in excellence. Like, those are things that outlast goals. And those are, again, we talk about values. Those are values that are going to show up in everything they do. And so I think for us, like that's our number one job, is to find that security, find that contentment in who God says we are, live that out. Because again, you're talking about the Nitro Circus show. You don't even have to know what action sports is to love it, because courage is contagious. Yeah. You see guys flying in the air 60 feet on some of these jumps, slamming on their face, rolling around on the ground, and then running back up the stairs to do it again. There's something about that that's contagious. It's that courage that we all look for. And it's a way to share that with the world.
Man, you talked about so many things. I could probably have a podcast on its own, but yeah, man. Well, the nap thing, totally down. So I was like against it for a while, but I'll tell you this. So I've been running since 5 this morning. I got up, did my thing, my morning routine, but then hit work because I had to, I was doing this photo shoot. He knows about it, but I was doing a photo shoot for my upcoming book for a cover, but it was about an hour away. And then I had to drive an hour back, and I had a little bit of time, but I want to be fully present for this podcast. I always want, because for those that have never like done our podcast or created it or been on one, it takes a lot of energy. We're having fun, and I love this, and I'm passionate about it. But I always tell you, I have to sit for a few minutes after a great podcast, like interview with Beaver, because it's like it's a draining, but it's a good draining. Like it's a good thing. Mm-hmm. But for me to be energized and ready, I took a little bit of 15, not really a nap, but I put on some motivational tunes, 15 minutes, put an alarm to make sure I didn't pass out, which I did actually, and I popped up and I was ready to go. It's like it. So like he talked about caffeine and coffee, like. These are tools. Let them have a purpose, but don't depend on them so much that anything else. Working out, it can be a tool, but I talk about it in my book about, I in my 20s, I was chasing pain when it becomes a problem. So like just have that self-awareness. Life is a constant journey, as you say. Listen to your body, give it what's need, but really make sure you're being honest. Like if you don't regularly work out, like, oh, I'm tired. Well, maybe workout could actually energize you. So let's be honest here too about everything. Like have some self-talk.
Sometimes you got to get it moving. Yeah. Prime the engine.
And I'm sure Beaver's got people in his corner, have people in your corner that support you, man. Like, and he said something about kids. and I don't know if you use this term. I don't hear it very often. And it's something I use and try to like drip on people, especially new parents. It's like people say, I'm raising kids. And I like to say we're raising adults because eventually they're going to be where we're at. Right. So when that just changed my mindset. I'm raising a future better than me, Justin, is how I look at it. Like, or the girls, like that's what we're doing. They're going to be where we're at quicker than the snap of the fingers. My producer Scott's in there. He's got grown kids and he knows exactly what they're talking about. And it's like, we're trying to do the best job we can. And so, you're going to mess up, but just make sure you show up and have that self-awareness to, okay, how can I do better the next day? Because if you are a mother or a father, that's worked for me as far as when I have that mindset, and also how I treat and talk to my kids, and with them, and not talk down to them, not that I'm treating them as adults per se, but just knowing they're eventually be in my shoes, and like what I'm gearing them up for. So I don't know, but that's some great stuff. Yeah. So Nitro Circuit, extreme sports, you're a faithful man. And I know I talked to you this off, like the first time I met you, and I still get this feeling you've got to be a unicorn, a rarity, or am I wrong in assuming that, being a believer, a follower of Jesus in extreme sports? I don't see it. I see it in other sports, and then I see it non-existent in sports. So I'm just curious.
There's a few of them. And actually one of the top guys, Ryan Sheckler, recently, the past 3 years ago, really came to his faith and is on fire for the Lord right now. And it's pretty amazing. So there's guys in it. I would say, I think it's so rare because I was talking to someone at the skate park about this yesterday. Skateboarding by nature is a rebellious sport.
Right? That's what I think. That's why I did it when I was a kid, right?
There's no football signs, no basketball signs anywhere in the world. There's no skateboarding signs on almost every sidewalk in the world. You know what I'm saying? They're literally government goes in to building a city. Okay, we need to implement skate stoppers, right? On the ledges. You see them all the time, these little bricks that they put to stop people from skateboarding. So skateboarding by nature is a rebellious kind of act. And a lot of the people, it's not you don't need a team to do it. You just need yourself and a board, and I'm going to do it my way. It's very ego driven for the most part, and it can be beautiful. But again, you can use that and get addicted to it and let it wreck your life, which unfortunately a lot of skaters have, and have taken their own lives through depression and suicide, or it's drugs, alcohol, all that kind of stuff. It's rebellious by nature. So I think that's why there's not that many believers. But again, I think it's an incredible opportunity, right? Where the darkness is, the light has all the more opportunity to shine bright. And I've noticed it's been an amazing opportunity and it's a beautiful harvest. And people, whether or not they believe what I believe, it's gotten to the point where they respect that I'm so convicted in my faith that actually they appreciate that and respect me for that, and opens the door to a lot of conversations that just kind of change people's mindset on it. Like, I hate the word religion. I think it's all about a relationship with God. And it's like same thing, working that out. You can't behave your way into believing. You have to believe so much because God is so good. It's going to change the way I start behaving. And that's exactly what faith is.
Well, you touched on something, I guess I could have assumed, but I didn't realize, the depression, the vices, the addictions, the suicides. And I mean, I would attribute to what we previously talked about, like the endorphin rush, right? Like, it's got to be such a high with what you're doing. Because, like, I remember a kid, so, like, and even to talk about the rebellious stuff of it, when I was younger and on my skateboard, I remember I was like proud of it or something. I had my Tony Hawk stuff, paint job, but I had my Anarchy, the A with the circle on it, like on my skateboard. Like, and I struggled with my faith early on, and it wasn't, I went to a point where I wasn't believing. So I totally get what he's talking about. And that's why I asked, because when I grew up in the skating community, it was like that, where I was at, and it was like, even my parents were against, they weren't necessarily against skateboarding, but they were against what it seemed to represent in the 80s and 90s when I was doing it. Yeah. And so that's why I'm just curious. But I love that it seems there's a respect. People may not be following Jesus. And that's why I tell people it's not a religion. It's a relationship. I mean, and when you get that wrapped in your head, it's the most incredible thing. And it's your relationship. It's not Joe Schmoes across the street. It's not your pastors. It's not the person sitting next to you that you feel is judging you or whatever. It's yours. And I tell my kids that it's your relationship. And I love the respect. So Similar here. I started playing hockey last year. I wanted to get in it. I learned the sport. Now I play in a couple leagues, and it's so much fun. But I started to see a lot of things. Yeah, most guys I play with don't go to church. Some are atheists, claim that title. Some just don't believe. But I just, it was actually terrifying at first. And I just said, hey, can I pray before we go out on the ice? And it was pretty cool. And we were just like, hey, those that want to leave can leave. Nobody left. And to this day, I still pray in locker rooms, and for the most part, people are receptive of it. I've gotten one or two people to like join a church, and it's just opening the eyes of just like, this is love.
Yeah.
I just sat down. Yeah. And I don't know if it's correlated, but it just popped in my head. So I'm going to bring it up. I just sat down. Yeah. I would love to hear your thoughts. With my kids this weekend, we watched Jesus Revolution. Have you seen that yet? And it was just, have you seen it? Are you familiar with it?
I'm familiar with it. We've done actually some stuff up at Greg Laurie's church, Harvest, but I haven't seen it. I didn't know that happened. Like I didn't realize there was a different movement. It was just interesting for my kids. My kids actually got emotional, and at the end they said, I want to go to heaven. But it's just to see people who were searching for something else and were broken, and really just preaching the spirit and love and what it was about, and similar things that you want to talk about. So I just wanted to bring that up too for people that maybe haven't heard of the movie or just curious. That shows like what happened and what it's a really good movie that I would encourage people that it was a massive movement. I mean, that's why so many churches exist here in California today. Like, yeah. And
that's what I said. It started there. And when you look at it, these people were broken too. Like these people still struggle with addiction, and like the Frisbee guy, like he ended up dying in the 80s for AIDS. You can look him up, but it's just where he was. And if you learn more about his history, and we're all broken people trying to do our best, and they were just trying to help other people and bring people in. So I just thought it was a cool story. So let's touch on that. Like, this podcast theme is a lot about resilience and overcoming and still striving despite. So, how have you developed resilience in your life, and what advice would you give listeners who may be facing challenges? Maybe give an example of some really tough stuff that you've been through and just had to overcome. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. I mean, I think life's always challenging, right? But I think our perspective in it, and we can choose to see it as hard and tough and frustrating, or man, it's an opportunity, and it's all in our perspective. I love that quote. When we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. And so for me, resilience,
I like that quote.
For me, resilience isn't so much about trying to prove that I can overcome all these things as much as it's like, I just want to, is it possible? Like finding what's possible and being willing enough to go for it regardless. That's, I think, my biggest challenge I'm still doing right now, proving my dream from a 13-year-old boy to want to be a professional skateboarder. I'm still proving that right now, and I think that's been my biggest challenge, and I'm still doing it. And I think those challenges are the most inspiring, the ones that aren't just quick. Like I've had a lot of injuries. I got metal in my arm here. There's a nice scar. I blew out my knee a few years ago, right before one of the biggest tours we've ever done, and was out for 6 months.
That had to be shattering, right? You're like getting excited about this tour.
It was the first year I got invited to X Games, all that kind of stuff. And in the moment, it feels like, man, it's just breaking you down. But I think look for the longer term. Don't get so caught up in like the hit, the traumatic thing that just hit you. Look at the longer term. Well, am I still here? Do I still have breath in my lungs? Do I still have a purpose that I can accomplish? Like that's the more resilience to me. And to me, it takes more faith. Like, can God just mend a busted up knee? Absolutely. Can he revive the dead? Absolutely. Can he do these miraculous things in a moment? Absolutely. But I think it takes more faith sometimes to say, you know what? I'm going to go through and take whatever I'm supposed to get out of this process, but continue pressing on even through that resilience, because that to me shows true faithfulness that like, yeah, this crappy situation happened, but I am going to overcome. It's going to take time. It's not going to be a quick fix, but every day, like that's the faith that's getting stacked on and added on to you, which then builds that resilience, because you're like, man, it's been this process of building faith. It wasn't just like one prayer. Okay, now there's peace like no other. It's like, no, I'm going to do that prayer, but I'm also going to believe that that prayer is coming true as I continue to work out my faith throughout day-to-day interactions in life. And I would just have to say my biggest challenge has been, a lot of opposition where I grew up. Skateboarding is not going to get you anywhere. You're not going to be able to do anything with it. Like, do you really think you'll be a pro skater? and being like, no, I'm committed to doing what I feel God has put in my heart to do. I'm going to do whatever it takes. So I'm going to say no to all those things my friends are doing. And I'm going to say yes to more time at the skate park. I'm going to say yes to figuring out how to move to California. I'm going to say yes to figuring out how to make money on a skateboard. Like, I'm going to just keep saying yes to what I feel called to. And the more you show up, the more you say yes to the things that you feel called to, builds resilience.
So you talk a lot about faith, and it's a big part of your life. Did you grow up in a faith household? This has always been part of your life, or did you have your challenges with it? Or
I grew up in a Christian home, but I talk about it a lot in my testimony. Like when I speak at churches, the church I grew up in was probably the place I was most discouraged of skateboarding and pursuing a career in that. And then I'm reading the Bible for myself. And again, I thank my parents. They did the best they could with what they had. They knew the community and the church, and that was just where we were. But my dad, I would see his Bible was always on his desk. My mom would always pray with us before bed, and they had a deeper relationship than a lot of people I saw at the church. So I'm reading the Bible for myself, and I'm like, all right, the Bible says, commit to the Lord whatever you do, your plans will succeed. That God is able to do beyond more than we could ever ask, think, or imagine. Ephesians 3:20. Like, this is what the Word of God says, but you're telling me you can't really make a living riding a skateboard. Well, I'm going to choose to believe the word of God, not the word of man. And so when I hitched my faith to the word of God, that's what allowed that to produce. Because again, religiosity crept into that church, and broken people, they never made their dreams happen. So why should they encourage you to make your dreams happen? Just, do the normal, get a 9 to 5 and live a life. I don't even know if you can say you're necessarily proud of if you didn't ever go for it. So that's what I was around. And so you had to break that mold. And that's why I say, I think that was my biggest challenge that I overcame, was just the words that you hear in your life of you'll never, you can't, whatever. Proving what you know in your heart to be true is so much harder than any physical thing I think that we can ever face. And so same thing for those that maybe grew up in a divorced home. And they're like, well, this is the patterns of it. No, the biggest challenge you're ever going to overcome is being faithful to your wife to the day you die, because that's going to be something that you're continuously pursuing to break an entire generational cycle and curse. And so I think that's where that faith comes in again. Faith without works is dead. I'll show you my faith by how I work. I'll show you my faith because I believe that God is for me. I'm going to do things the way they need to be done. I'm going to honor this opportunity. I'm going to honor this time. I'm going to honor my child, my wife, because I feel God's placed them in me. They're my, property to manage and make and do well with. And everything's an investment. And we're called to be stewards of the land. Let's steward our relationships well, our friendships well, our life well. We are going to be accounted for.
Yeah, I mean, it takes work.
Yeah.
I feel like people know it, but they don't really know it. Like, if you want a good life in your whatever it is, we work hard at, whether it's our career, but the marriage thing, I don't know what the divorce rate is now. It's always been like 50 or plus, it's high, but you got to work at it. And, you got to have like perspective shifts. Like, I'll tell you, I could provide a whole show on this too, but for me personally, becoming a better listener for my wife, for example, and working hard at that, and just realize sometimes she just wanted me to listen, not even say I love you, just listen, not even utter the word the, but sometimes and sometimes it's like she might want feedback, and I'll ask, do you just want me to listen, or do you want some feedback right now, or something along those lines? And then sometimes it's one of the other things that it's also putting things in her perspective, not just what she's saying, but how she's saying it. Like, her love language is totally different than mine. I need to be, I don't know. Yeah, I'll be honest. So I love it when she physical affection, hugs, kisses, telling me how awesome I am, Beaver. Like that works for me, bro. But like, she's different. And even the way she talks to me different. But it took me forever to realize this. Like, and it's still a challenge some days because I got to look it through her lens. And so that's where, like, going back to, listening to your body and being the best possible. And, I always come back to just breathing before I talk, but I fail at that sometimes because I just want to react. But it's just working at it. It's working at that. Same thing with the kids. It's a job, but it's the most important. And I learned, it took me a minute it's cyclical. Like, you know, the more I put into it, the more I get back from it. And it's just like anything else in any relationship, whether it be a relationship with your work, your boss, whatever that looks like. And these can be challenging things. So, and it sounds like that's what you're talking about. And I just wanted to touch on that a little bit. And so kind of on that subject, it sounds like your parents supported you, but it was your church. Because I was wondering like how Tennessee, what it was like, you know, you growing up there to support this career. It's like going to your parents and saying, I want to get an art degree, which they might have supported that more than skateboard. Hey, I'm going to support myself and my future family by doing skateboarding and extreme sports. And so paint a picture of that. What that was like.
It was one of those things that I'm just so thankful for my parents. My dad played college football, was super passionate about that. And he always jokes, he's like, not really jokes, but he's like, if I had the drive you had, I would have for sure gone all the way.
That's a compliment and a half, man. That's awesome that he said that.
It's really powerful. And I'm so thankful for my dad and the relationship we have. And just his, the support, because their friends were like, why are you building a half pipe in their backyard? My dad didn't know how to build a half pipe, but thankfully he supported me enough and figured out how to get it done.
There were no YouTube videos then, right? No,
no, there were no YouTube videos, nor he knew he wouldn't be the guy to build it. So he's like, I'm going to hire people that know what they're doing.
That is some love, man. That's ultimate love and support.
It's powerful.
That's awesome.
And it was him seeing something in me that he didn't understand. And I have to have that grace for him because he didn't understand why I was so passionate about it. But once he realized he's like, all right, I'm going to do whatever I can to help him and take care of him. And he made a deal with me and my brother, as long as we didn't get into real trouble. Like, he wasn't that smart in school either. And I didn't do the best in sitting in a classroom all day and answering a test. So we didn't have grade issues there, thankfully. But he was like, as long as you're not in real trouble or drinking or drugs, I'll support you until you're 18. I will support, like, financially. If you need skateboards, I will buy them. Like, if you need gas in your car to get to the skate park, I will get you to the skate park. Like, he covered us. And well, not my brother. He started drinking, unfortunately, a little young, but I saw that. Thankfully, I was the younger brother, saw that and was like, okay, well, he had to get a job at the golf course. I don't have to get a job. I'm going to stay. You know, I knew saying the no then would give me to a better yes now. You know what I mean? So thankfully learning that, and same thing, like, I mean, that's what I feel really kept me grounded in my life. Was I had a lot of friends that I grew up skating with that did get into drugs and alcohol, but I saw them showing up at the skate park and not skating at all. And I'm like, well, I don't want what you guys are doing to get in the way of what I'm trying to build. And if I feel called to a career in skateboarding and you guys used to skate, but now aren't because you're getting high all the time, that's not something I want to be a part of. So it actually made my decisions for me. It was like, if that's going to lead to not skating, then not a chance I'm going to do that. So it kept me grounded in that way. But yeah, my parents supported massively. Even at the cost of some friendships and people not understanding, you know, in that small town where everyone talks. But they believed in it. They supported it enough to get me to California. And then by the time I was 18, I was traveling with Nitro Circus. So it really started to happen real quick.
It sounds like similar. Yeah, I love what you said too. You know, that's a quote, you know, no, saying no then meant to a better yes now. And I was the younger of two brothers, and I got to watch them and be aware of their mistakes to not repeat their mistakes. And it sounds like similar for you. I saw, for example, one of my siblings, I'm not going to say which one, but one of my siblings go down a challenging and dark path, and just watching that not do him any service, it was like, man, I don't want any part of that. But I might have been the same thing, because we all went through some challenging things in our childhood. I write about it in my first book, and Purpose Through Pain. And so it's one of those things where, like, you know, if you can have not necessarily a mirror image, but something to look at. So it looks like, and it's so cool to hear that, like, that's support, like supporting, you know. I actually heard a quote this morning. I was listening to a podcast, and they basically talked on that, where it said, it was talking about loving your kids so much that you don't understand, but you just support, you know, and you're just there for them, and you just sometimes just listen and say, I love you and I support you. And it was a really powerful thing. And it sounds exactly like what your dad was doing. He just loved you unconditionally, and it was a healthy thing you were doing, even if it didn't seem like you you wanted to be a doctor, lawyer, or psychologist or something. And it's paid off because you had that belief and support, and that's huge. That's so
Powerful.
huge. It's powerful. So, man, your energy, we've talked about it throughout this podcast. It's on your social media. Like, this guy is just an energetic dude. And I know you've talked about how, per se, like faith and family, the only like personal tools that you do, whether it be morning routine, discipline, or things that just create that atmosphere. I don't know. You look up at the sun, what are there any other tools that just keep you always like this, man? Because it's infectious.
Getting filled up in prayer every morning. Like, that's the one, if you could call it a routine. I pray every single morning. I read the word every morning, and just get outside in nature, try and connect with yourself, try and connect with God, and just put your mind in the right perspective and get in the right place and say, like, my prayers change every day, but at the end of the day, I have to go back to the Bible every single time, because that's where I feel is the book of life. And it's, enter his presence with thanksgiving. So I always start with that, like thanking God for my health, my family, my wife and baby that are sleeping right now, this beautiful house that I live in, the ocean, like just get thankfulness up. And then you stop thinking about yourself so much. You're just like, man, I'm so blessed. And that, again, it just makes you appreciate things more. And I think that's what we're here to do, is respect them, respect people, respect things, respect this planet, like really take stewardship over your life. And that's what helps me to do it and feel passionate about it and give things the justice they deserve. I was thinking about it when I was in the ocean this morning, because I grew up not in the ocean every morning.
We're over here in Rochester, New York, and we were just covered in smoke and like level 400. And you're talking about just, hey, I was hanging on the ocean. Rub it in, dude. No, I'm kidding.
No, but that's what I mean. Like appreciating and being grateful for that, because I didn't have that. And I'm like looking out into like, the horizon, nothing out there. And I'm like, man, I don't even know if I'm going to be out here my whole life, but I'm grateful that I'm here right now, and I want to enjoy every bit of this for this season. You know what I mean? Because me and my wife have talked about at some point moving to Hawaii and stuff. So I'm like, well, I want to be grateful in the ocean here, because I can be in the ocean there, but with these people that I'm around right now and the things that I'm doing right now, it just really brought that back into everything is seasonal. Even my baby being a baby is a season. Like you're saying, you're building actual men and women. You're building up humans and adults. You're raising adults. Well, let's enjoy them and have respect for this season where they're so young for so little.
What you just said, and then the statement that I made about us being here, and then the recording of this is going to be out later, but that we were going through the wildfires in Canada. We're pretty much directly below. We're one of the more, we were in like purple, and we were basically still told to stay inside. And apparently the smoke levels are worse than 9/11 at a certain point. Wednesday was pretty bad. In fact, here what was thinking. The first story was moving here to New York. My brother lived in New York City since 2001, and we moved here in 2011. We moved from Iowa. We'd only lived there a year. We met in the Midwest. I got a whole story, but I was never scared. I just stereotyped essentially what New York was. I knew Buffalo. I'd been there. I'd been to Syracuse. I'd been to New York City. It didn't compute that New York had the Adirondacks, the Thousand Islands. And I'm like, I didn't realize all this. And I love nature, and I love mountains, and I love waterfalls. I like oceans too, but as I lived here, it's like, man, like that's I feel so connected to, especially like we hiked the highest peak last year as my daughter, when she turned 13, to hike the highest peak in New York, which is Mount Marcy. And we got to the top, and one of my kids teared up, and my wife teared up, and they just felt like God on top of that mountain when you see this creation, and you're like, almost 6,000 feet up in the air. And we'd just been hiking. We ended up hiking like from 7:30 in the morning till 10:30 at night, and it was over 17 miles, and we hit up 3 peaks. It's an exhausting, but when you do that as a family, it was amazing. And it was cool to see that. And back to that, like, I was grateful to move from Iowa, but I was also like when I got here, I was, didn't understand where we were going, but I was super grateful once I realized all the benefits, because I opened my mind, like, we're here. But I was also grateful. I was like, man, you know what? This is better than Iowa, because we live near a dog food company. And I was like, I don't have to smell dog food every morning. So it's like little things like that. Yeah. But I was also thinking, like, Wednesday, what happened was I got a newer truck. and they still have it. They seem to think something with all the emissions, even though these newer vehicles are supposed to help with it. It basically shut down all the electronics of my truck, and I was like driving, and my brakes and my steering went out. Thank God. Okay, this is where I was like, thank you God, because I wasn't going 60 miles an hour on 490, which is like the highway here. I was going 20 miles an hour, like a block from my gym. So I just pulled in the parking lot, and nobody was in front of me. But this is like this weird thing where like all these alerts come on my truck. I'm flooring my brake and just coasting. My steering really doesn't have control, and it's just like. But I'm thankful that I was able to get a loaner. I was thankful I had tow, and like I could have been in like this really upset, depressed, angry. But man, I was always looking. This could have been way worse. So it's just in these moments of adversity, and you tell a good story. I mean, you talk about some broken bones, and you share some like inspirational stuff on like your Facebook and your Instagram. In fact, why don't we go there? Like, is there any like story or experience, whether it's yours or not, that you've shared on your social media channels that just stands out in your mind that is just a powerful example, especially like overcoming adversity?
Yeah, I mean, I think overcoming adversity, injuries are the kind of the simplest one to do. I mean, skateboarding, it's not if, it's when. You're always going to have some sort of injury. You're never really skating at 100%. You're always dealing with a tweaked ankle, wrist, something.
Sounds like hockey.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I got this fat bruise on my calf from a puck hitting it where I didn't have padding. So.
Come on. Dang, dude, those things aren't soft. But yeah, so, I mean, a few years ago, I blew out my knee right before a tour. And it was really tough. It was dark. It was like, what am I going to do? Am I going to be able to come back on this? You get surgery, and then you can't even lift your leg. You can't even walk for 2-3 weeks. And all these thoughts come into your head. But again, it's just, all right, what you feed grows, what you starve dies. So I'm going to feed the thoughts of, I can get through this. I can get better. Celebrate the little wins. Okay, I can finally lift my leg off the bed. Okay, I can finally put a little weight on my leg. Oh my gosh, I'm off crutches. Like celebrating those little wins, and like I've got more flexibility, I've got more strength in it. And yeah, just overcoming day by day and moment by moment, and knowing that life is a journey. Things are going to happen, but they're not happening to you. They're happening for you. You can have all these quotes, but also what's behind the quote is what's important. Okay, this bad situation happened to me. I got hit with a puck. There's this gnarly smoke here. Okay, well, how are we going to overcome? How are we going to come together? Maybe it's a good thing. Maybe it's a blessing in disguise. Like, all right, yeah, God didn't send that fire, but because of that fire happening, now people are able to slow down a little bit and actually recognize, man, maybe we're not in control of everything. Maybe we don't need to be so focused on what are we doing. Maybe we need to focus on coming together. All right, well, it's not safe to go outside. You know, like that time in COVID, it wasn't safe to go outside. They thought, well, maybe we need to just be more present with the people under our roof. And I think it did help a lot of people that chose it to help them. And I saw families get together. I think when something traumatic or massive like that happens, it either makes things pop or flourish, right? Like a lot of relationships got broken and people were just out. Other people came together and re-fell in love with their significant other that they were on the brink of divorce with. Like you hear these stories and it's all back to perception.
Man, how old are you? I forgot.
I'm 29.
You have and you've probably been told this before, but you just have such an amazing mindset, and you seem, I know I couldn't remember you're at least 30, but you're 29 and you just have this perspective and mindset and just of like, you know, a place many people probably don't even reach. And have you always been this way? Is it just you? Did you have like mentors or role models? Are there any mentors or role models? We know Jesus is definitely one, but your dad maybe. Like have you had coaches? I'm just curious, like, you know, how have you be able at age 29 to just have such a great perspective, and what's been a contributor to your growth and success?
Well, I mean, I've been blessed to have a lot of incredible people around. I'm very blessed with the church we go to. So mentors are like our pastor. The church is called Awaken in San Diego. They're one of the fastest growing churches because they were the only ones open when the world shut down, which was such a blessing to have. And so, our Pastor Jurgen, is an incredible mentor to me and so many in our congregation, and just his story coming from Australia with nothing and building a church on a word from God, it inspires me. And even my life, like coming from Tennessee to California with a word that I felt in my spirit from God, it's it's living it, experiencing it, and not being afraid to fail, not being afraid to fall, not being afraid to test things and see what can happen. And just, again, having that mindset of being in the word of God and wisdom, right? Like wisdom's a gift. And it says, if you lack wisdom, ask for it, who God will give generously. And so I continually ask for wisdom, and God has been faithful to provide. And so I really appreciate you saying that. I'm just grateful, and I want to share whatever I can with others. That's why I do Motivational Monday. That's why I'm writing books.
Yes.
That's why I'm putting out stuff all the time.
That's how I found you, doing like a Motivational Monday, and then on the Bible app too. Yeah. And then we connected, and I was like, this is just a cool dude. Like, this is a cool dude. And I just love your energy. So would you say skateboarding is a pretty strong community, like in culture? Like, and would you say that?
For sure.
So like, how was being a part of that? Like you've talked about some of the influence you had. Has it influenced you in any sort of way?
I mean, absolutely. I think, again, helped me to think all things are possible. I was watching that video. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's like Jerry Seinfeld and Chris Rock, and they're having lunch, and they're talking about skateboarding. And they're like, I'm actually not too worried about the skateboarders because it's so difficult. You have to fall and fall and fall on concrete, and then you finally land it. And he's like, they're going to be okay in whatever they do because they were willing to fall till they got it right. And it was just kind of like a powerful thing. But I think that's the thing that's, influenced me in a lot of ways, is like, not being afraid to fall. Like if you want to get good at something like skateboarding, it's very difficult. It's very painful at times. Like it's not easy to learn how to even stand on a board comfortably. There's so many people that have never stood on a skateboard, and then they just try and stand on it, and it zips out from behind them and they fall right on their butt. Like it's so difficult. And then to figure out how many moves, like it's one of those things you're never going to be able to master either. Like even if you're hitting the highest, biggest ramps, there's still going to be a stair set that you don't want to touch or do anything with, or some sort of flip trick maneuver that you don't want anything to do with. So you're never really able to master it. So I think it keeps you guessing. It keeps you learning. And that's what I think keeps you humble in life, is the willingness to learn and want to learn and know you don't have it all figured out.
So I agree with you. Like I encourage people, like I learned hockey at age 41, and similar thing. There's a lot of fear. I'm encouraging everybody. Oops. So that's my, I have an alarm that goes off every few times a day, and I forgot to turn it off, but it's one of the things that I like to do and share with people. It's what am I thinking and how do I feel? It gets me to say I am going through a challenging time. It gets me to refocus, like, and think good thoughts, and gets me to refocus, especially if I'm distracted or sad or going through something. And it also what am I thinking and how am I feeling? So that's what that was. But what
are you thinking? What are you feeling?
So I feel great. And I was just thinking about the next question and or not question, but what I was going to say about this, and it was surfing and ice skating and what you talked about, because like, I encourage for the same reasons: learning, being humble, and growth. Don't be afraid, especially in skating. You got a lot of pads. Skateboarding, you can wear pads too. I know somebody that just learned how to skateboard around my age. Rollerblading, I'm taking on rollerblading now because I'm doing skating, and it's an easy transition. And I'll tell you this: one, it's created more memories with my kids. You can feel like the brain just firing in different areas. There were some growing pains initially with hockey because it's like myofascial tissue, and I go down the science route. But in the long story short, after about 6 months, my body has never felt better. I feel great. And skating, and probably like skateboarding, it's like for me, skating, I compare it to like flying on ice. Like I can't run that fast, but when you get even somewhat decent, I still consider myself as I suck, but I'm a lot better than when I was a year and a half ago. But also surfing. So there was something you said there that reminded me when I went surfing for the first time, and was in Mexico years ago. And what I loved about surfing was, like, no matter how good the surfer was, they always had to start over. And eventually you hit the land. And it was just a perspective. So I was like, they're always going to fall off the board. Even some of the great ones that I saw, and I met one that's like this youth skater that's like doing the pro circuit, making money at like 15, at the time. And he's probably still doing it. But anywho, it's like they sometimes fall, but they get back up. Like it's a humbling experience. And it's also just like life. You might be riding that wave And I always compare it to like flow. Like people look at like flow as like everything's going good, but it's just things are flowing well, but
Right.
you might crash, you might fall off the board, the skateboard, the surfboard, but you got to get back up and continue that. You're going to get back up, you're going to swim back out, and you're going to get on the board and you're going to take on the ride. But that's why I love the analogy you used for that. But I really love what you said, because it reminded me of surfing, and it actually gave me confidence, because the first time I went surfing, I was terrified, but it's something I always wanted to do since I was like 2. Like I remember just loving. I live in the Midwest, but I was fascinated. And even when I moved out here to New York, people thought I was from California. I still don't understand that, but it's like I love watching surfing. I love doing surfing. I want to do it more often, just because it's also a great community too. I didn't know anybody, and people were supportive, even though they saw how horrible I was. And it's and that's why I was thinking about that. And you just touched on some really cool stuff, man. So we're going to be wrapping it up here, but I got a couple questions. One, what are some future things? You talked about some of your travels. Is there anything like to share, like you got coming up, or projects, or share like with the people that are listening?
For sure. Yeah. Next week we are heading to Oklahoma for a Nitro Circus event. They're doing also rallycross racing with the cars, which will be really cool.
That'll be awesome.
Then, they even have a new ramp I've just seen a couple photos of. So people are going to be trying some new stuff out there. It'll be really exciting. We have our massive tour in the fall, starting in October, going all around the U.S. 20th anniversary tour of Nitro Circus.
No, what, 20 years? Wow.
That's coming up this fall.
Those ramps get higher
20
and
years.
bigger. They get faster. You guys ride the weirdest stuff sometimes. It's just cool.
Oh, yeah. So, that's what we got coming up.
And this show's all about striving, especially striving even on your good days, but especially it's harder to strive on those bad days. So, any other advice that you'd like to give listeners, to push through the challenges, to strive every day, and whether it be practical steps or to start living just a better life, anything you like to add here at the end? Yeah,
for sure. I think you're more capable than you even know. And I think that's, again, why God always says, be strong, be courageous. So many times, fear not in the Bible. It's constantly in there, because it's God just trying to remind us, like, hey, you've got more than you even realize you have. You're made in my image. You're made in my likeness. Like, you have the opportunity to do anything you want to do. Anything's possible for those that believe. And I truly believe that. And the only way we can find out if it's true is if we believe it enough to give it a go. And so, be willing to strive, be willing to pull more out of yourself, and start small, start small. There's little things you can do to make that happen. I always say to people, if they're scared of heights, well, go up only one flight of stairs and look over the rail if that's scary. If not, go a little more. And then when it gets scary, like, wait till you get comfortable there. And they're like, oh, it's really not that bad. And then keep going higher. Like, everything's a process. Everything's, scalable. So figure out how to overcome.
So one little thing. So you seem like pretty creative. I mean, to do this sport you do, you got to be creative. You got to be a visionary. You got to be imaginative. I truly believe. I was telling actually a guy I met with at my church. He said yesterday he's on staff there, and I just want to talk to him about a few things. And he said, oh man, I'm not a visionary like you. I'm not a creative like that. You want to talk to this guy, or this guy. And then I thought about that, and I didn't address it then because I wanted to marinate it on it. And I texted him later, and I was like, you know what? If you're a believer, and even if you're not, like, God is one of the most amazing visionaries, one of the most incredible creators. And if we're all a piece of him and a child of him, then that makes us creative visionaries in our own right. It may not look like what Beaver's doing, what Justin's doing, or what some painter is doing, but you've got it inside. And I said that to him, and he's like, man, I needed to hear that. He's like, you were so right. And so with that, if you could take your imagination and dream big, and in the words of my daughter, unicorn-sized dream, what would it be? Or what would the world, what's coming to your mind? What are you thinking, and how do you feel is basically what I'm asking. Big size, unicorn size.
I mean, unicorn size is really what I'm doing right now. Just continuing to see what's possible in my own personal life, raising up my child, and wanting to share what I do with others. And that's why I developed a ramp system that we can take to schools, take to youth groups, and I can actually bring what I do
to Rochester.
The next generation. To show them that all things are possible, and share them with my story, and show them, again, by faith with works. Like, here's my faith and my story on faith, but here's my work and my craft that I've honed in because I was so passionate about my faith, and bringing that to the masses. And so that's what my goal is right now, and just inspire anyone who hears my journey that, man, maybe they're more, again, capable than they thought they were, and their dream actually has a purpose. And back to that creative thing, every single one of us is creative. People have gotten their creativity blocked by frustration, by bad breaks, or even self-sabotage. So overcome it. It's there for you to get creative again. You have to be creative, do anything, you have to be creative. So the way that you're not creative is when the devil hijacks you and makes you conform to whatever the patterns of this world are. So again, find yourself connecting with God to find out who you really are and what you're really capable of.
Well, that's cool that you got to come to Rochester. I think one of my buddies has reached out to you to try to get you here. But when you guys are back, you got to let us know. This guy's just a cool dude. If you're not, you need to follow him. You look out for him. We'll definitely put his social media links in the show notes and everything. But Beaver Fleming, thank you so much, man. This has been awesome.
Thank you, Justin. This has been awesome, man. I really appreciate what you're doing, and I'm blessed by this conversation as well.
Yeah. This was so cool. It's a highlight of my day. Going to my journal. Well, thank you for listening, everyone, or watching another episode of Strive 365. We know you found some nuggets, and it's a totally free podcast, so do what you can to support it. And remember, you're not just supporting yourself. You're not supporting us. You're supporting the others that are listening to this or watching this can find value and even save a life. We've heard that happen to some of these episodes. So please share, comment, do what you can, because it's not about you. It's about the world and how you can help. Even small things like that get more notice of things like this, and they can listen to people like Beaver and other people that have talked on this amazing podcast and the stories that they've told and the nuggets they've shared to help us really strive. We're a large world community. We're here all to help each other out. So thanks again for tuning in to another episode of Strive 365. Take care.